Alright guys, we got cut off on the end of that last video, so we're going to do a real quick part 2 just to introduce you to the other type of sequences, which are geometric sequences. These have what we call a common ratio. So instead of adding or subtracting a number each time, these are actually going to multiply or divide, and dividing is really just multiplying by a fraction, so those are the same thing. So these are either going to multiply or divide by a number, and we call that the common ratio. Alright, so this says we're going to start with some term, we're going to multiply by our common ratio, we're going to multiply by our common ratio again, so now we have multiplied by it twice, there's 3 times, and so on. Alright, so our recursive formula for a geometric sequence says that a sub n equals a sub n minus 1 times r, or in other words, to get the term that we're looking for, we're going to take the term before it and we're going to multiply by that common ratio. The explicit formula says that to get a sub n, or any term that we want, we're going to do a, which is our starting number, our very first term, and we're going to multiply it by r n minus 1 times. So just like on the arithmetic, we don't need to multiply, if we're looking for the 100th term, we don't need to multiply by that number 100 times. We only need to multiply by that number 1 less than that because we already have the first term. So just a real quick example. This one says find the common ratio, the 10th term, a recursive rule, and an explicit rule for the following sequence. So we saw an example very similar to this in our arithmetic section, but now this one is going to be geometric. So let's see if we can figure out the pattern. To get from 3 to 6, we're multiplying by 2. 6 to 12, we're multiplying by 2. Alright, so every time we go up a term, we are multiplying by 2. Alright, so we should already know our common ratio, which is our r. Our common ratio is 2. And if you were dividing by a number each time, we would just turn that into a fraction. This is always going to be written in terms of multiplication. So if this had been dividing by 2 each time, we would have said that our common ratio was 1/2, because dividing by 2 and multiplying by 1/2 are the same thing. Alright, again, we're going to save finding the 10th term until after we have developed some rules. So let's look at the recursive rule first. Alright, so the recursive, can't spell, the recursive rule says that to get the term that we're looking for, we're going to take the term before it and we are going to multiply by our common ratio, which in this case is the 2. So we are going to multiply by 2 every time. Now we do have to tell where we're starting. We always want to tell our first term. So my a sub 1 for this one is 3. Alright, so there's my recursive rule. A sub n equals a sub n minus 1 times 2 with a starting value of 3. Our explicit rule, this is the one that we want to be a formula so that we could just plug in any term number that we want, that we're looking for. This one said a sub n equals a times r to the n minus 1. Alright, so to plug in the information that we have, our a, or our start, this is the same thing as a sub 1, our starting number is 3. Our r value, or our common ratio, is 2, and we're going to multiply that n minus 1 times. Alright, so for the 10th term, if we're looking for a sub 10, we are going to plug that in for our n. We're going to do 3 times 2 to the 10 minus 1 power. Alright, so that's going to be 3 times 2 to the 9th power, and we'll let you type that in your calculator to figure out what that is. Okay. Alright, so skipping ahead to the homework problems, the ones that we would like you to take a look at from your worksheet are numbers 1 through 10. Alright, these are from your sequences worksheet, numbers 1 through 10.